For almost the entirety of NBA history, the MVP voting has followed a very specific formula that they very rarely diverge from. For one, you need to be on an elite winning team. Number two, you have to have really nice stats, but not necessarily the best stats as long as you're winning a lot. And number three, you have to have a nice story to the season. Specifically, to really emphasize how important winning is to the formula, listen to this. In the past 30 years of NBA basketball, every single MVP winner has finished in the standings as a top 2 team in his conference, with the exception of one, which was Russell Westbrook in 2017, who was the first player to average a triple-double since 1962. So unless you can do something that's so incredibly historic that it breaks the formula, you're not winning MVP unless your team is an elite winning team. But is this fair? Is this really the most accurate way to gauge a player's value? Many people don't think so, and think that the award too strongly favors players on elite teams rather than who's honestly the best player or the most valuable player in a literal sense. So what if we said screw the formula, and instead just gave the award to the player who was literally that season's best player? Well, things would change up quite a bit. The decade we're looking at in this video is the 2000s, and let me know in a comment if you agree or disagree with these choices. In the year 2000, Shaquille O'Neal won the MVP award by a wide margin, and if it was given to the best player that season, Shaq would still keep the award. This was the greatest version of Shaq we ever saw, as he averaged 29.7 points, 13.6 rebounds, 3.8 assists, and 3 blocks, on 57.4% shooting. It was his personal career high in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. There wasn't a player in the league who was as coveted as Shaq was at that time. His dominance controlled the game like no other player could, and it was on both sides of the court. He should have been the first ever unanimous MVP winner, but one delusional voter out of a total of 121 voters thought Allen Iverson should win the award instead. Speaking of Iverson, in the year 2001, Allen Iverson won the MVP award, but if it was actually given to the best player that season, Iverson would lose the award, and it would have gone to Shaq instead. This isn't intending to take anything away from Iverson's greatness, as I recognize that he had an amazing season carrying the 76ers offensively. He averaged 31.1 points, 4.6 assists, and 2.5 steals on 42% shooting. His 76ers won the most games in a weaker Eastern Conference that year, and that was part of the reason he beat out Shaq in the race. But if we're being honest, Shaq impacted the game in more ways than Allen Iverson did, as O'Neal dominated on both the offensive and defensive side of the court, unlike Iverson. O'Neal's production was just slightly below his near-unanimous MVP season, but it really wasn't that far off, as he averaged 28.7 points, 12.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and 2.8 blocks on 57% shooting. Shaq also had a player efficiency rating of 30.2, which is ridiculously high. It was actually the highest that season by far, beating out Allen Iverson by more than 6 points, which again just emphasizes how he impacted the game in more ways. In 2002, Tim Duncan won the league MVP award, and on this new list, he keeps the award, but barely. Duncan put up averages of 25.5 points, 12.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists, and 2.5 blocks on 50.8% shooting in what was arguably the best regular season of his career. Shaq's production had again dipped from the previous year, but this time he didn't even make an all-defense team appearance, while Duncan was the best at his position in that area, making first team all-defense. Kobe also began to break out this season, but in terms of efficiency, statistically, and overall impact on both ends, Duncan maintains his edge. In 2003, Duncan was once again the league MVP winner, but now he barely loses the award to Kobe Bryant. If the playoffs and the NBA Finals were part of the award-winning equation, then Duncan certainly wouldn't be giving this award up, because his postseason was dominant on a historical level. His regular season averages were 23.3 points, 12.9 rebounds, and 2.9 blocks on 51% shooting. Kobe, on the other hand, averaged 30 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals on 45% shooting and 38% from three-point range. Although Duncan has the edge in field goal percentage, Kobe and Duncan had an almost identical true shooting percentage. It's probably the most underrated season of Kobe's career, as he was finally beginning to establish himself as the Lakers' best player. Within this season, Kobe had a night where he set an NBA record with 12 three-pointers made in a game, and he also had a historic streak of 9 straight 40-point games, which, excluding Wilt Chamberlain, is tied for the most consecutive games ever with Michael Jordan. He averaged 40.6 points in the entire month of February and shot 47% from the field and a remarkable 43% from three-point range, and the Lakers won 11-3 in that stretch. He did all of this while locking up guys on the other end of the court. There's certainly an argument to be made for Duncan to keep it, but for me, Kobe was the best player this season. In 2004, Kevin Garnett was the MVP winner, and he's going to keep the award because he was easily the league's best player that season. Shaq's game had continued to drop off as he famously began that season significantly overweight and only averaged slightly over 20 points per game that year, which is disappointing by his standards. Kobe was dealing with a multitude of injuries and was also caught in the middle of the Colorado trials. So although he had an impressive season when all things are considered, he was still producing well below his usual standards. Tim Duncan had a good year, but Kevin Garnett had the best season of his life, as he averaged 24.2 points, 13.9 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 2.2 blocks on 50% shooting. He led his team in 4 out of the 5 major statistical categories, nearly leading his team in every major category for the second straight season. Essentially, Garnett made this year one of the easiest decisions I had to make for this list. In 2005, Steve Nash won the MVP award, and this time he loses the award to Kevin Garnett. This was a tough season to choose as no one clearly stood out among the crowd, and I could see a solid argument being made for up to 8 different players. Nash was the engine that drove the Suns' incredible offense, but very few people would go as far as saying that he was the league's best player, even if he won the MVP. His player efficiency rating is far lower than just about every other MVP candidate, and Nash was never known to be a good defensive player, which is literally half the game. Shaq had a good bounce-back season with Miami, but clearly wasn't the force he once was defensively. Kobe had arguably his worst season of the 2000s, as he was well below his efficiency standards, and the Lakers were losing a ton, and he did not make an all-defense team appearance that season, which is a rare miss for him. In the actual MVP voting, Garnett finished barely outside of the top 10, but that was in large part because of the team's overall lack of success, winning just 43 games. That wasn't his fault though, as he was once again a statistical monster on both ends, averaging 22.2 points, 13.5 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.4 blocks on 50% shooting. In 2006, Nash won his second straight MVP award, but he's losing this one as well, this time to Kobe Bryant. It's not that Nash didn't have a good season, because he did, putting up 18.8 points and 10.5 assists on a 50-40-90 season. It's just that Kobe had individually the best season of his career, as he put up 35.4 points, 5.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, and 1.8 steals on 45% shooting. In this season, he also made first-team All-Defense, making this year the highest scoring season by a player to ever officially make first-team All-Defense. He also had his iconic performances of 62 3/4 and 81 points against the Raptors just a month later. The Suns finishing as the number 2 seed and the Lakers finishing as the number 7 seed was the major difference in the actual MVP voting, but at the time, Kobe was clearly the better overall player. In 2007, Dirk Nowitzki won the MVP award, but he loses this one to a prime Kobe Bryant. Dirk had a fantastic season with averages of 24.6 points and 9 rebounds on 50-40-90 percentages, and his Mavericks won 67 games, which often means the best player on that team wins the MVP award. I'm starting to sound a bit repetitive at this point, but it's something I can't ignore, and that's the defensive end. I simply think it's almost impossible to be considered the best player in the league if you're not also elite on the defensive end. Dirk was certainly a capable defender, but never at any point of his career was he considered elite. Kobe, on the other hand, was once again first-team All-Defense to go along with his averages of 31.6 points, 5.7 rebounds, 5.4 assists, and 1.4 steals on 46% shooting. In 2008, Kobe won his first actual MVP award, but on this new list, he actually loses the award to Chris Paul. Now hear me out, this was a very heated MVP race, and once again, if the postseason was included, we would have a different story and Kobe would keep his award. But since it's just the regular season, I'm completely confident in saying that Chris Paul was the best player this season. CP3 has been in the league for so long now that a lot of people don't know how good he was in his prime. And Chris was one of those rare cases where the prime of his career was actually in his early 20s. New Orleans CP3 was just on a separate level from his Clippers and Rockets days. Sure, Kobe had averages of 28, 6, and 5 on 46% shooting while being elite defensively, but Paul also made first-team All-Defense that season, putting up averages of 21.1 points, 11.6 assists, 4 rebounds, and 2.7 steals on 49% shooting. The 22-year-old led the league in assists and steals and was the best defender at his position. He simply dominated in more ways than Kobe did, which is reflected in his significantly higher player efficiency rating that season. In 2009, LeBron James won his first MVP award, and in this new format, he keeps the award, but barely. LeBron led his Cavs to 66 wins, but even outside of the team accomplishments, he just had a fantastic year on an individual level, averaging 28.4 points, 7.6 rebounds, 7.2 assists, 1.2 steals, and 1.1 blocks on 49% shooting. This was also his first season making the NBA's All-Defense team. Kobe had a great season as well and went on to win the NBA championship. But statistically, LeBron clearly had the superior regular season. Dwayne Wade, on the other hand, had very similar numbers to LeBron, but his Heat only won 43 games, so he was hardly considered for the actual MVP. LeBron keeps this award over Wade though, mostly due to his first-team All-Defense appearance and his higher PER than Wade's that season. Do you agree with the list? Let me know in the comments section which years you think I got wrong, and if you would like me to do more videos like this about other decades. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.